What's up everyone, it's Sid, and it's time for my final build update for the Ice Spear Freezing Pulse Totem build this league. I've played both ends of the spectrum, a week 1 glass cannon setup with massive DPS, and a fully tanky setup focused on survivability and mapping consistency. Today I'll break down how each version performed, what worked, what didn't, which I would recommend depending on your goals, whether it's early farming and bossing or pushing harder content. So let's talk about the week 1 version with the glass cannon setup. This version we reached around 100 million DPS with Annihilating Light, Sublime Vision, which are extremely cheap this league, and some cluster jewels and other jewels that I have in the PoE. Easily handled invitations and was very capable of doing Ubers like Eater, Exarch, Cortex, and even Cyrus. All you have to worry about is not getting hit. Yes, sometimes this build requires 6 portals. Now it works really well for carry services like even invitation farming and like early boss progression. You can do Maven for people, you can do the Void Stones for people, etc. Now the downside, like I already mentioned, it's very squishy, it dies easily in juice mapping strategies. You end up resetting in 8 modded maps, so you can still do them, but you're just gonna have to use a lot of portals. You will get to a point where you clear off screen with Ice Spear splitting, but doing content like Beyond or where tons of mobs rush at you, it's pretty much kill or be killed type build. But for the cost of 10 to 30 divines, it gives incredible value and is my go-to for early currency farming build. There are very few builds that can give you this amount of power for this cheap, and that's pretty much the main functionality of the glass cannon setup. Now let's talk about the tanky variant. This is pretty much done via block cap via Savalin and Impossible Escape to get to some block nodes. We also get crit immunity via Verity's Veil. We also got Progenesis for Flask based damage absorption, and then you also have some high chaos res for some consistent mapping. Now, this build has been great for mapping 16.5s and 8 modded maps and doing a lot of currency strategies with that. It is very good at T17 maps, but it does struggle a little bit with bosses depending on the mods itself. But it's very capable of clearing out the map. It is also solid for, juice farming strategies like Divination of Plenties, which I tried, Blight, Delirium, or even Invitation rotations, just like the glass cannon setup. But the main thing with this build is that it's very expensive. It's pretty much a 200 divine investment from the glass cannon setup. You take out a bunch of damage to switch out for block nodes, and then you slap on a Savalin, and then you also use Progenesis. And both of them help out a lot. Of course, the Savalin is the main core component, and the Progenesis is like a little bit of icing on the cake to help you out a little bit. So let's just do a direct comparison real fast. You have the glass cannon setup, which is 10 to 30 div, whereas the tanky setup is, a little over 200 divs. I got the glass cannon to somewhere around 60 to 80 mil DPS, but it can easily get to, 100, 200. And as for the tanky setup, I got to 35 million Ice Spear and around 3 million Freezing Pulse. It just depends if I swapped out certain gear or not. Survivability, of course, glass cannon is going to be low. The tanky setup is much higher. In terms of mapping, the glass cannon is fast, but it's risky. The tanky setup is also fast, and it is a lot safer. There is like a little bit of DPS issue, but for the most part, that's the only thing that slows it down, which can definitely be upgraded with more investment. Now, in terms of tier 17 viability, the glass cannon setup can kill the boss very, very fast, but unlike Ubers, the T17 map bosses have quite a bit of mechanics, and those mechanics really get you. So on the glass cannon setup, it's not really viable at all. Whereas with the Tanky setup, it is dependent on the mods. You can pretty much tank through all of the mechanics for the most part, but if anything gets past your block, it definitely packs a punch. I haven't looked into too much on raising the effective, or not the effective hit, but just your incoming hit. If you could take a higher damaging hit, then I think our survivability would go up even more. Our EHP would be like super high. In terms of gear, the glass cannon setup is fairly accessible, and even this league, that's why I have the cost at 10 div. Usually it should cost you around 30 div, but Sublime Vision, the last I checked, it's like 60 chaos, which is just absolutely unreal. I just don't know what is happening, but you know, it works out really well for the build. For the Tanky setup, of course, it's a little more expensive. It's 200 div, and I still think it needs a little more investment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, in terms of Flask testing, Pro Genesis was just more consistent and reliable defensive layer. I did talk about in the previous video about trying out Wine of the Prophet, and I think it's a cool idea, and I think a lot of the buffs will really help out the build, but it's just too RNG, and I honestly don't even notice when I have the gains. I notice when I have Soul Eater, and that's pretty much it. I personally wouldn't recommend. I just think Pro Genesis is more consistent. I really wanted Wine of the Prophet to work because, you know, like I said, with the Tanky setup, our defense is very good. Our offense is a little bit behind and it needs more investment. So let's talk about some of the investment, right? So our ROI basically, because even with 200 divine spent on this build, on this Tanky setup, it still dies in juice mapping strategies, in juice tier 17s. It has a bit of a slower clear time. I was doing divination of plenty strategy with a couple of delirium orbs. I was putting in maybe like 1 or 2, and it was like 6 minutes per map. It really depends on the map mods. You know, you could pretty much do all of the content, you know, blight, altars, div cards, even bosses, right? You could do invitations on this like perfectly fine. But you have to ask yourself, is this worth the investment? And you know, I really can't come up with a good answer because it's a maybe. And the reason why I say that is because I think 200 divines isn't enough, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. I think you need to get somewhere around, you know, 200 to maybe like a mirror or 2 to get this build pushing a little bit further and to make it like more comfortable. And I think you need like a 200 or 300 divine amulet. I think this is the main change you want to do. With this, you can get something extremely strong like a +4 with 130 crit multi, which would definitely help go through a bunch of mechanics faster, especially in the tier 17 bosses. If we can squeeze out 20, 30, 40 extra mil of DPS, I think we're gonna have a much better time doing tier 17 bosses. You could also upgrade your wand to a +2 with some spell damage, crit multi. You know, I only spent 4 divines on a wand. You could definitely spend 100 divines or even look for a mirror tier wand with, you know, crit multi, +2 spell damage, cast speed, you know, all 6 mods. If you can push this, I have like a theoretical PoB here that's reaching around 100 mil. The one thing you would have to do is you would have to swap out Ralakesh for Rainbow Stride, I believe. Yeah, you'd swap out for Rainbow Stride. that'll help you stay at spell block cap, and this would open up your amulet slot. And here you could invest on that +4 130 crit multi amulet. There are some insane amulets out there where you can get a +8, but those are multi-mirror, and yeah, that's not happening for most people. That's not happening for me either. So yeah, TLDR, dropping the DPS for the defense is nice. It allows you to do and explore different currency strategies. You know, it keeps the game fresh. It allows you to kind of try out what other people are doing, what other people are farming, and that's really nice about, you know, PoE. You invest and you want to be able to try different content, but it needs a little more DPS. Even 200 divines is not enough. The defense is good, the damage is okay. It needs a little more kick, and a expensive wand and an amulet could definitely fix that. Now, some alternate ideas that I kind of wanted to explore but I didn't get a chance to. This is kind of like a fun ideas, you know, thoughts that I have. And the main one is to drop Savalin and go spell suppression plus mage blood. You would primarily use like a Shaper Shield with spell suppression with extra block chance, increased block chance, life on block, and you can optimize this with, you know, some of your Flask as well, right, to get some spell suppression, and then use your boots, gloves, and helm as spell suppression. This would open up your ring slots. It would free up your helmet, right, because you're going to be switching out of Viridi's Veil. You're going to have to find a new way to basically get crit immunity, and you could do that through the shield as well, and also through your passive tree mastery. There's a node that lets you take reduced crit damage. You can also use tattoos to get some more chaos resistance. You know, you can also use tattoos to get spell suppression, but for our attribute pressure, most likely the best tattoos you can get are chaos resistant to help you out. Because now you're moving away from Viridi's Veil, you can also open up your ring slot, and you can get a, you know, multi-divine mirror tier ring where you can get more cast speed, more attributes, etc. Yeah, with basically what I'm saying, with enough currency, right, of course any build can scale further. I'm choosing not to push it this far because I want to try out a couple of other things, and I, you know, want to see what's out there. The most optimal way to play this build, in my opinion, is during league start. Start as the glass cannon, spend about 10 divs, 30 divs, depending on how expensive items are in the league. Use it as an early bossing, invitation farming, currency strategy, and then after a week or two, pivot to another build, such as the build of the league or something you want to try out, or try the tanky version if you do want to go for the tanky setup, and then you want to aim for the mirror tier items, etc. This build is also going to be good for some challenges, right? The glass cannon setup, usually there's always some sort of uber boss challenge or some boss or invitation challenge that are there in the league, so this will help you out going for those 40-40 in each league. And you know, the glass cannon, it's pretty good. 10 divs an hour you can do through invitation farming, and then if you become more experienced, you can push up to like 30 divs, 40 divs an hour if you want to do like feared rotation carries or boss carries. You could also get yourself an aura bot, and then you can comfortably do these carry services since you don't need a lot of currency to get a lot of damage on this build. And then you could also just invest all your currency into the aura bot, which is the traditional way to level up an aura bot. Now, just to talk a little bit about leveling and endgame, you know, I didn't really get to level 100. Usually with this type of build, you know, I like to just push as much hard and difficult content as I can. I like to do bossing. They made a good change where you don't lose XP during bossing, but through various strategies and running like multiple scarabs, you end up dying during maps. And if I was to suggest getting to level 100, you know, try doing domination shrines and avoid altar mods or like negative res, reduce block mods, etc. But I think the best option is to just do 5 ways and then watch a movie and AFK it, put a couple of enlightens in your armor and level those up, and you could even profit while leveling to 100. Now, I didn't really try that much to get myself to 100. You know, I stayed around 90, 95. I think my character's 93. I stayed a little nerfed, you know, which is fine. I think it's just good to showcase my character while it's a little nerfed, while I don't have all the passive points. Kind of makes it more relatable to people trying out the build. Now, long term, this build still holds up as a great league starter. I might even make a mini video showcasing how much you can do with just 1 or 2 divines invested. Could be a cool idea, because right now everybody is just showcasing like 20-30 divine strategies, and they're using like mirror builds, right? They're using builds that have like 100-200 divines like invested in it. But you know, you could basically do half of that result, right? Make 10 divs an hour for like a divine or 2 invested. Now, finally, what's next? Right now, I'm looking to try a new build next, which is I'm thinking of Burning Arrow of Vigor Elementalist, which caught my eye. It looks fun. It seems like it can do a lot of content, and I want to try it out. And since it's that time of the league to kind of explore, I want to give it a shot because I haven't played an Elementalist in a very long time. And that's pretty much it for the video. If you have ideas or requests on what type of content I should do next, drop them in the comments below. And thank you guys for following on this build journey. I'm ImSidVicious, and I will see you in the next build. Peace.